Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 17th episode of Yeast, your energetic, authentic self today. I am Sheila.
I am Hope.
And this is Joy.
Great to see you both again and be here for our audience, for all of those out there listening. So the topic for us today is to talk about regret, what that looks like for us and how it shows up for us at times, and perhaps particularly for Hope and Joy, they'll have some recommendations on how we can address regret when it shows up for us. So Hope, how about you kick it off?
Absolutely. So I think when I think about regret, I would say that there are so many different ways for different people to feel that. Sometimes the regret can be very big, like life-changing event happened and you wish you have done differently. But other things may be small, maybe everyday life decision, and you made a decision you regret about it. So I will go ahead to share one of my examples. So a couple years ago, when my dad was in stage 4 lung cancer, I was taking care of him. And we heard this kind of juice extracted from wheatgrass that would really help a cancer patient to recover. And certainly I did a lot of research. I bought the extractor, I bought wheatgrass seeds we grow, and we extracted juice for him. And he tried and he didn't like it. He just refused to take it. At that time, I would say that I kind of have some feeling of, Dad, we're doing this for you to save your life. Why can't you try? Why don't you cooperate with us? But right now, when I think about it, that was 7 years ago. I don't think about it often, but when I think about it, I was like, you know what? I think I understand why. Because every time he tried, he actually had a stomachache. And I don't know that then that he probably, because he was wheat intolerance, like gluten intolerance, the wheatgrass may not be suitable to him. But if I went back time, I probably would be asking my dad on, hey, what's your thinking? What's in your thought? How that like impacting you? Why not? Instead of just assuming that, Dad, you're not trying hard enough, right? So that would be just a moment of, when I think about that, I would say, I wish I have done differently. But as a coach, I would caught my thought of, oh, I'm thinking about the past, which I have done my best with the information I have, and I would forgive myself and move on instead of stay in that regret thinking and blame myself, and which doesn't help anything because my dad is gone. Even though he's in my heart all the time, but it doesn't help him, doesn't help me. So that would be one example of me thinking about regret, but caught my own thinking and let it go.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
That makes sense, that everything you were doing or you have been doing was making him comfortable, healthy. Of course, you will feel regret when you think of you could do it differently. But I'm also glad that oftentimes you reflect and you find a way out of it, because no matter how hard you regret, how much energy you invested, things are not changing because we're not going back to the past. Yeah, I heard two things. I'm sorry for, your dad. That was really sad to hear. He's gone, and So besides that, I also hear two things in this sharing of the regret. How do you recognize the feelings you're experiencing? I heard when we start talking to ourselves that, oh, I should have done this and I should do this, I should behave that. Sounds like that's a sign of the regret or starting of the thought of regret the past. And the second thing, I feel like, I don't know, I kind of lost my thoughts here, but I think the
I think you
regret
are
is,
absolutely right. When you hear things or even hear our own thought of, I should
Mhm.
have done this, I could have done this, I would have done this, that's the thinking of have the element of regret.
Yeah. And I'm thinking the second thought that came to my mind is you actually coach yourself out of it with the turning point, recognizing here we are today, accepting the current state, and then, confirming with yourself or validating yourself, I did my best. It's not the nature like I didn't really make the effort, but you did your best with the information And then you can find a little bit peace out of the situation. So those are two things I heard that can be more common to other people. Including me, I'm guessing many people will experience regret. Like you said, both big and small, right? I just came out of a cruise ship and I think I can find many examples like, oh, I should exercise every day. Of course I didn't. I only work out on 1 day out of 7 days. So that I can tell myself, at least I did once, I tried. And I think those are easier to get over it. It's just like a split second of the thought, and then you got over it. Or like, oh, I ate 2 pieces of cakes, right? I should just do one. I think those are really smaller examples that you get over it. I think I find the same trend with what you're saying, like, hey, at least I tried, at least I did this and that. I felt like the turning point from blaming ourselves with the regret for things we didn't do that we think we should do, to the point, bring a little more peace to ourselves means, I gave myself credit and I did my best. I felt like those are two things that really resonate with me with my smaller examples so far.
Yeah, I think you summarized it really well on one, recognizing, and two, give yourself credit on that during that time you did the best. I think what's also helpful for me is take the learning and move forward. And because my mom is still alive, so whatever I learned from taking care of my dad and reflect on what I could have done better, I apply that to my mom. So when I talk to my mom, interacting with her now, I'm more conscious about what's her need, right? For example, in the past, I would insist her to come spend a few days with us. I'm like, Mom, come spending with us. Your grandkids are here. Why don't you come, right? And right now, all she needed to tell me is, I come or I'm not coming. And like this weekend, originally she said she's coming, and then she changed her mind. She said, I'm not coming because I want to be more safe than sorry because COVID is still here. And I said, Mom, that's totally fine. Whatever you want. So that's the learning I'm applying on, and respect the other person instead of what I want.
Yeah. I think the learning is the big piece of it. And you also reminded me sometime, from my experience, there's like, depends on when you look at the same situation. I look back the first 1.5 years I came to US, I couldn't find a job. I was jobless. 1.5 years because of the immigration situation that the field of epidemiology does not hire immigrants back then. And I think I probably said a million times to my husband, I should never came to US. It's all big, it's, because you're here, I'm here, I should never came. This is not the place I can even have my career, not even to mention grow my career. Right. And then I had a second period of not having the job because he changed the job. And I came back to the same thought of regret, like I should never came, look what I have here. But now 15 years looking back, like I think that's the best decision I made. I didn't really find a way to come out of my regret thoughts back then, but situation changes. Now when I look back and it's not a regret anymore. Instead, it's actually the gratitude, right? I feel grateful that I actually came here and I lived the life I live now because I single decision. So that's a little bit interesting. Sometime, maybe that's a different view to think, sometimes things are different. We regret we did or we didn't do certain thing. But it gave it a little longer term view. If we could ask, what would it look like in the future? We don't know. Who knows the future? Maybe sometimes those kind of thoughts of regret might be changing. I don't know. Something came out to my mind.
Yeah, that's a good thought. Sheila, what do you think?
Well, I think as I listen to the two of you and we talk about some of the big picture type of regret and then the smaller things, there may be a tendency for regret to show up for us as it relates to people and those connections, right? Because oftentimes things you say and or do, you don't get a do-over, right? So you may tend to experience regret around things you say and or do to people. But the things you do to yourself, you may not sit in that regret as long, right? Because it's you can recover rather quickly. We don't know the choices that we make as far as what we say and or do to others, truly how that impacts those individuals. And as I just said, we don't get a repeat, a do-over of that. So there may be a tendency for us to sit in that energy, right? Of I wish I could have, heard, should have, could have, would have, want to, from that standpoint. But I hope you touched on a couple of things that I wrote down, and this may go to, some of the recommendations that we have for our listeners when you experience those moments of regret, is to have that reflection and offer yourself and or those around you forgiveness. Forgive yourself first, recognize that you made a choice. There's learnings in that. So forgive yourself. And then Joy, you touched on the fact that, reflecting back with your experiences coming to the US and not being able to find a job, that perhaps where you are today, when you look back, you're grateful, you have gratitude for having that experience because it's helped support you, turn you into the person that you are today. So there's learning and opportunity even when we experience regret.
Yeah.
I think so. I think maybe another thing that's helpful is at this moment, when we are making decision, how can we make decisions that we're less regretful? I think that means that when we are making decision, we need to make sure that decision, whether it's small or big, it need to be aligned with our value. For example, with the example Joy mentioned about 2 pieces of cakes, it's easy to say, okay, it's so good, I'm going to eat 1 piece. But if you say my value is I want to be healthy, I want to be disciplined, maybe then it could be easier to say, I'm going to just eat 1 piece today. Try that. Maybe it works.
I'm sure it will.
Perhaps for someone else. Great advice for someone else. Eat cake if you want. Eat as many slices as you want. Or maybe it's just one very large slice.
Sheila.
All perspective.
No.
Ultimately, we've talked about this before. We are all at choice when it comes to the people in our lives, and more importantly, ourselves, because we really have to take care of ourselves. Let's remember that we're at choice. Let's look to keep in mind those choices that are best for us and our connections to others. And if we keep that in mind, going to your point, Hope, the values that we have, and if it aligns, we may be less likely to experience regrets. And that way we are being more present in the moment, because regret pulls us back. We want to be present in the moment with our feet pointing toward the future.
I love that.
Well said.
Okay. Any other last thoughts regarding regrets and recommendations for our listeners?
It's okay to regret, to feel regretful. Just catch yourself and keep the learning and move on.
Yeah, I would actually add on that. It's okay to regret occasionally. And you learn some tips to get over it, right? But if someone constantly experiencing regret and regret pretty much every single thing you're doing, I think the mood can be really not helping. So I would say, if you happen to be in that situation, maybe seek some help. Talk to someone to see what you can do to change it or to regret less, right? You already heard feeling of regret may not really helping you to move your life to a lot of, how do I say that, a constructive way. Maybe that's a better way. So, hopefully we all regret less. If we do, we find out how to get over it and also learn from it. That's all from me.
Awesome. Thank you. Great conversation. Once again, this is Y.E.A.S.T, your energetic, authentic self today. Appreciate you both. Appreciate our listeners. Have an awesome evening.
Thank
See you next
you.
time.
Bye.